Good night, world. This is Ivan the Mayor here again. Today, you're looking at an interesting video. I am going to be reading Chapter 1 of Lord of the Rings. So now that the boring part's over with, the prologue was pretty boring, obviously. I hope you guys are enjoying this Lord of the Rings series, by the way. You guys are obviously enjoying it because anything Ivan the Mayor is interesting, obviously. But so I hope you guys enjoy the prologue. So the prologue, so to all you guys who haven't read Lord of the Rings, you guys now know, you guys now get an idea of what the prologue of what Lord of the Rings is about. So I read the prologue, the entire prologue. It was 20 pages. And it's pretty much about the history of the hobbits, the races. They're dealing with elves, dwarves, men. A bit about Bilbo Baggins' journey there and back again when he found the ring, and his dealings with Gollum. How Bilbo could have killed Gollum, and yet he didn't. And he ended up slipping on the ring, and Gollum was guarding the pathway, the exit, Gollum was guarding the exit to make sure Bilbo didn't leave. Because Bilbo had the ring on, he slipped the ring on his finger, was able to escape from Gollum and the orcs. You get a little bit of history with his sword Sting, obviously, right? His sword Sting, and how he could have killed Bilbo, but he showed pity on him, obviously, which is a powerful statement because had Bilbo killed Gollum, would Frodo and Sam have known the way to Mordor? Known the way to Mordor. That's a good question. But at the same time, Gollum betrayed them, and he led them through Shelob's lair, obviously. And Shelob ends up stabbing Frodo, obviously, and Sam has to go rescue him. Obviously. But at the same time, would Frodo and Sam have known the way to Mordor had they not met Gollum? That's a good question, obviously. So it's almost like as if it was meant to happen, like Gollum. In other words, Bilbo wasn't meant to kill Gollum, obviously, because Bilbo showed pity on him. Obviously. That pretty much summarizes the what. It summarizes the prologue of Lord of the Rings, obviously. And now I'm going to start chapter 1. I'll read a good 15 pages today. Chapter 1's a good, I don't know. Chapter 1's a good, how much pages? Let me check here. Chapter 1's a good 30 pages, 30 plus pages. So I'll read 15 pages today, and I'll continue the rest tomorrow of chapter 1. Right. Just for the record, the first half of Fellowship of the Ring is pretty slow. It drags on. It's not until you get to Rivendell that's when the story really starts to pick up. But even the Council of Oron is a drag. It takes it's like thousands of pages. It's crazy, man. So how much pages is it? Okay, so 27 page 27. Looking here. I'll read 15 pages today, and then I'll read the rest tomorrow. The reason why I'm reading this is I want you guys to get an idea of the world, the amazing world that J.R.R. Tolkien created. Because J.R.R. Tolkien's a legend. I respect him. Even though his book's pretty boring, his series is pretty boring, you can't deny the masterpiece that he wrote. As Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece. The world building is amazing. I'm only going to read a good 3 chapters of Lord of the Rings, and then the rest I'll leave it up to you guys. For those of you guys who want to pick up the book, I recommend you buy the book on Amazon. It's cheap. The series here I got, this edition here, I only got it for it was $32 on Amazon with tax and shipping. It was about $40. Whereas if you want to get the more top-notch editions, those are more expensive. Those are 60, 70, 80, 90, even $100. They're more expensive, obviously. Right? Yeah, 54 pages. So 54 subtract what? 54 subtract 27 pages. So 30 to 54 is 50. So it's 30 what? 30 to 54 is 24 pages. So it's 27 pages of prologue. So I'll do 3 parts. So today I'll read 15 pages. The next day I'll read another 15 pages, and the remaining day I'll read a good 7 more pages of chapter 1, and I'll start chapter 2. Looking at an interesting video for that. I don't know. Do you guys prefer that I just read, or do you prefer I read and comment? I think it's cooler if I read and comment. But again, I understand Lord of the Rings quite a bit, but I'm not I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings, but I'm not a nerd. I don't know the full ins and outs of the book yet, because it's a complicated book to follow for me personally. Because I wasn't born with a gift with a USB. In other words, because I wasn't born with a very very intelligent mind, it's hard for me to grasp a story like Lord of the Rings very well. Whereas I was born with a creative mind, but I wasn't born with a very intelligent mind. I'm not born with a big USB, and it's tough for me to grasp some of the stuff that's going on in the book. Because I saw the movies, I know I know the gist of the book, obviously. But I told you the movies are only like 20% of what's written in the book, man. You'll see what I mean when I read. When I start reading chapter one, it's finally gonna hit your minds. Oh my god, Peter Jackson left out so many things in this book. Yeah, man, he left it. Even though Peter Jackson's a genius and he was able to adapt, because to adapt a book like Lord of the Rings is a tough task. As Lord of the Rings is a difficult book to adapt because it's it's a complex world building, complex plot. Well, the plot isn't complex, but the world building is very complex. There's so much going on in the book. It's a tough book to follow. So the fact that Peter Jackson pulled that off, that's amazing, obviously. And he did an amazing job. As Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, is the best movie trilogy ever made. So Peter Jackson did an amazing job. The only issue I had is that he didn't follow like the book that much. He only followed like 20% of the book. I believe they should have done it book by book. Book one is pretty much, it starts off with Frodo. It starts off with Bilbo's party, and it ends around Rivendell. That's book one, and then the Ring Goes South is book two, I believe. That's around book two starts around that range. I can double check here. Give me a sec here. Yeah, book one is pretty much. Sorry, I was mistaken. Book one is pretty much the Bilbo's party in the beginning, and it goes until what, when Frodo when Glorfindel takes Frodo through the ford, and Frodo confronts the ring wraiths, right? That pretty much ends book one. That's book one. And then book two starts off when in Rivendell, when Frodo, Sam, and Aragorn, all of them are in Rivendell. So I believe Hollywood should have made the Lord of the Rings, to be faithful to the book. They should have made it into 6-7 movies. They would have made more money. Hollywood would have made more money instead of splitting it into, because Lord of the Rings, it's so detailed. Three movies won't cut it. You have to what? You have to make it into 6 movies. I believe Hollywood should have made Lord of the Rings into 6 movies. That way you would have got the full story of J.R.R. Tolkien's book. There's a lot of detail. Lord, I got my lighter here. There's a lot of detail in the books in Lord of the Rings that were left out. I'll babble on for, I don't know, 20 minutes, and I'll start reading. I'll read. You're looking at a good hour, I don't know, 40-minute video here, because I'm reading 15 pages, which is a lot of reading. Before I get into the exciting part, which is Bilbo's birthday, chapter 1. So to all you Lord of the Rings fans, you're probably happy. By the way, there's a forum called Lord of the Rings Reddit, L0TR Reddit. They have a good 500,000 people subscribe to that blog. You also have Fantasy Reddit. Fantasy Reddit has over 1.5 million people subscribe to that blog. And you also have Fantasy Writers. For all you people who want Fantasy Writers Reddit, for all you people who are interested in writing fantasy, you can go on that blog, and and a lot of people post their writing material, and they get feedback and criticism from the people that are subscribed to that forum, obviously. Because I personally go to those forums. I read stuff, and it's interesting stuff. I read stuff in Fantasy Red. I read Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings Red is very interesting. They have over 500,000 people on there. Some good stuff there. And all those blogs, once my Last of Us book is released, all those blogs, all those forums are gonna go crazy with my book. As my Last of Us book, you're looking at something fucking crazy. You're looking at international fame. So crazier fame than Lord of the Rings. When J.R.R. Tolkien released Lord of the Rings in the 50s, it wasn't that popular, but I read online that it got really popular in the 70s. So right around when J.R.R. Tolkien died in 1973. J.R.R. Tolkien died in 1973. right around that time, that was when his books really start to kick off, and it became really popular. And now hundreds of millions of copies have been sold of Lord of the Rings, because a lot of people around the world today are buying the books, obviously. And I guarantee you, a lot of people, because I gave the Lord of the Rings book a shout out. A lot of people in the world now are probably buying the book. Hey, I want to check out this book. Ivan says Lord of the Rings is the best fantasy novel ever written. I want to check out this book, see how good this book really is. Because all you guys have all watched the movies, but a lot of people haven't read the books. The books are a masterpiece. A little boring, obviously. They're pretty boring books, obviously. But if you can just get through the info dumps, and you start to appreciate what the world that Jared Tolkien created, you'll start to enjoy the books, obviously. As I'll prove to you when I read the book, obviously. I'll read a good 3 chapters. I'll read a good 3 to 4 chapters. I'll stop at chapter 4. After chapter 4, I'll stop reading. I'll read a good 4 chapters of Lord of the Rings, and I'll stop. 3 or 4 chapters. And after 3 chapters, I will end it there. And around that time should be around the time I make my final announcement. Well, if I read it every day, I can read a good 4 chapters. So in between my in between my what? In between my my in between my I'll be making my phase 6 announcement at the end. I'll make my phase 6 announcement tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. I'll make my phase 6 announcement tomorrow. Today's the 29th, so I'll make my phase 6 announcement tomorrow. Look at interesting video for that. I'll be talking about how I finished my phase 6, which is formatting. I told you I wanted to have a professional company format my book for me, but the moment I sent them my file, and they told me, hey Ivan, your file has problems. You know, I'm saying, like, you sent us your file, and only your prologue we have access to. And I sent myself my file, and I looked at my file. I'm like, wait a minute, my file was fine. All 3 volumes are there, and it finally hit me. I'm like, oh my god, like, the doors are locked on me. They won't even let me format my book. So I had to go on Microsoft Word and format it myself. And because I format Microsoft Word, it won't be as it's pretty professional, obviously, but it's not going to be as professional as a traditionally. If you're expecting my book to look professional, like this Lord of the Rings book, it won't be as professional. As please keep in mind, I have to do everything myself. I can't even get my book proofread, as the doors are locked on me. I have to proofread it myself because I have a pretty good knowledge of grammar. I know the basics of grammar, like punctuations, all stuff. I know most of the gist of the grammar. You're gonna catch some typos in my book, obviously. So I'm gonna give you a heads up. You're gonna catch typos in my book, but please keep in mind I had to do this on myself. But there's a good chance in the future I'll release an updated edition of my book. Once I'm king, I might even hire. I might hire people to. I'll hire a top-notch proofreader. I don't need a copy editor because my book is good. I don't want anyone touching my story. But I'll hire a proofreader to proof my book, and I could release an updated version of my book in the future. I don't know. In a good 10 years from now, I might release an updated edition of my Last Horizon series, and that series I might release it in a box set instead of one book. So right now, I'm going to release Xanax in one book. So it'll be one book like this, and there'll be 3 volumes in the one book. Just like Lord of the Ring, just like Fellowship of the Ring has 2 books in the one book, my book will be one book, but the 3 volumes will be contained in the one book. So it's still a series. It's still three stories. It's one story, but it's divided into 3 volumes. And you're looking at a good 600. It'll be single space. Single space novel. Before I said double space, but no, I want my book single space. For fantasy, you have to have a single space. It looks more professional. And my book will be what? My book will be my book will be what? It will be it'll be about 600 pages. So it's a long book. Fellowship of the Ring is 530 pages. My whole series is slightly longer than this series. My book's about 15,000 words longer than this book. So Fellowship of the Ring was 530 pages. It was 177,000 words. My book is 192,000 words. 193,000 words, actually. So you're looking at a good 560 to like 570 to like 600 page book. So it's a long series, but it's not as long as Lord of the Rings series. As Lord of the Rings is a good like 1,200 pages around there. 1,300 pages for the whole series. Obviously. And I'll be selling my print. I'll sell for $100. So instead of you paying $190 now for 3 separate books, for the one book I'll be selling it for $100. And then my ebooks will be one book too. One book, but the 3 volumes will be contained in that one ebook, and I'll sell the ebooks for $22. Most people sell ebooks for cheap. Most people sell ebooks for $7. But if I want to make a nice profit for myself, I want to, because my book is top quality, I'm selling it for $22 because I want to make a nice profit. So as $22 is cheap as anyone can afford $22. So if you don't want to pay $100 for the amazing print collection, the amazing print book. Again, my book. I won't have a cover for my book. My book will be very simple. Remember that cover I showed you in my design your cover when I started my series. Remember that mysterious cover that I showed you, looking at something like that for Xanax. It's gonna say "Last Hope for Xanax," Ivan O'Mara, and it'll say Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, and I'll have like a symbol of trees and like an X and like a sword or something like that. It looks like top notch. Because my book will feel like history. It looks like top notch. So if you don't want to pay $100 and get the nice print, you can what? You can pay $22 and buy the ebook. There's some people who might just buy the ebook for now because they can't afford it. And once they have money, they'll eventually buy the print. They'll get a print collection themselves. But most of the fantasy nerds, a lot of them are going to buy the print. As fantasy nerds like to have a book collection in their house or apartment, whatever it is. And so $100 is affordable. It's pretty expensive, obviously, but it's affordable, obviously. Whereas $22 is very affordable. Anyone can afford $22. And so I'm going to be reasonable with my prices. Because printing costs a lot of money, and I want to make a nice profit for myself. I'm selling my book for $100, my print, and my ebook I'll sell for $22. And in my Phase 6 announcements, I'm going to show you guys the layout of I'm going to get my separate laptop. I'm going to show you guys my map that I post at the end of my book. So my map is posted at the end of the book. I'm also going to show you a bit of the layout, of my book on Microsoft Word. So I have it all saved in my Hotmail. I'm going to show you the layout of my book. As I'm done my formatting, all I'm doing now is just going over my book and fixing those typos, like ale. Sometimes I have misspellings of words. I misspelled some of the names. So I have to carefully go over my book and fix those. Very minor typos, by the way. You'll find a few typos, but very minor typos. I have to go over and replace the word AIL with ALE. I have to do that. So far, I went over 2 chapters, and I'm going to go over a chapter a day. So in a good 15, 16, 17 days, I'll be done. So mid-September, I'll be done. I'll be done going over my book. I'm going over my book one more time, and after this, I won't go over my book ever again. And I'm gonna cross my fingers. Hopefully, I don't have that much typos. I don't have that much typos in my book, but you'll catch a few typos, obviously. And for the next 2 months, I'm gonna make that Phase 6 announcement tomorrow, and then sometime next month, I'm gonna make that Swim with the Sharks where you're looking at an amazing video for that. And in between those videos, I'll be pumping out my read along, my Lord of the Rings read along. I'll be pumping out my Lord of the Rings read along. For what? I'll be pumping out my Lord of the Rings read along within the next 2 months. Because after 2 months, I'll be making that final announcement. You're looking at an interesting video for that. I'm going to talk about my life. And after my Students and Sharks video, all you have left is what? All you have left is my final announcement. And after that, and you have my Lord of the Rings video. And after that, I'm done, man. As I'm not going to make any more board videos. I ran out of ideas to talk about around the board. But I'll be pumping out my Lord of the Rings series when I do my read-along, and I'll comment on a few things, obviously. And then I'm going to make my Phase 6 announcement. The interesting one will be what? Swimming with the Sharks. Look at Israel for that. And at the end of October, I get my last check. My last government checks. Enjoy that money. Get a beer, celebrate. Next month, I'm going to get 6 to 12 beers. I'm going to celebrate because now I'm done on my phases. I finished my format. My formatting isn't the best. It's pretty professional, obviously, but it's not as professional as a traditionally publishing book, obviously. My book would have been more professional had the format coming forward my book for me. But because the door's locked on me, they're not going to let the stuff on is not even going to let another company format my book for me, and so I have to do everything myself. And that's the con of self-publishing. Self-publishing, you need to have money if you want to get your book formatted and proofread. That'll cost you like a good like $2,000, $1,000 plus. It'll cost you. Formatting is cheap, but proofreading costs us like $1,000 plus, man, for your book. And you need to have some money saved for self-publishing. But the good thing about self-publishing is that even though you have to do all the work yourself, you keep all control of you keep all your rights, you keep control of your novel, and you make way more money than traditional publishing. The only good thing about traditional publishing is they take care of the editing, your cover, your book cover, your editing, your proofreading. They take care of all that for you, but they only give you like 5 to 50% of the royalties, and you lose control of your novel. They now own you. So the publishing companies own you pretty much. If they want you to write a 3 book series, you got to write a 3 book series. Whereas self-publishing, you have total freedom. If you want to write a 2 book series or 1 book series, it's within your right, and you get total freedom to do whatever you want. And you get 70% of the royalties from ebook, and you get like 50 to like 60% from, depends how you price your books. Because I'm pricing my books for a lot of money, I'm gonna make 60% off print and 70% off ebook because I'm pricing my books for a lot of money. Obviously, $22 for an ebook is pretty expensive, as most ebooks usually sell for like $4 or $5. I'm selling mine for $22 because I want to make my 70%. Lulu will take 30%. 20 minutes here, and then Lulu will take 30%. And for the print, it'll take like 4%. So I'm gonna be making Lulu. Lulu's gonna make a good, like, for sales, for my book sales, you're looking at like, I don't know, 25, even 25 billion in sales or something like that. 25, perhaps even more in sales. The higher the sales, the more money I'll make. Let's say if my book does like 30 billion in sales, 30 billion after taxes is 18 billion. So I paid 12 billion in taxes. Me and Lulu and Ivan paid 12 billion in taxes. If Lulu takes 40% of that, I'll be making good. If I do 30 billion, if my book does 30 billion in sales, me and my wife are gonna make a good, like, I don't know, like 11 billion. And Lulu will make a good, like, I don't know, 8 billion or something like that. Lulu will make a good like 7, 8 billion. I'm gonna make a good like 10.5 billion or something like that. But realistically speaking, I did the math. You're looking at around 9 billion in royalties. Me and my wife, when they collect, hence you're fucking welcome to I fucking save your ass because of me. You're fucking rich. As me and my wife, we're gonna be so rich, and you're looking at crazy fame for my last Lord of the Rings book. Crazier than Lord of the Rings, crazier than Harry Potter, crazier than Way of Kings. By the way, I recommend all you guys who have never heard of Brandon Sanderson, you subscribe to his Brandon Sanderson channel. He also teaches on writing on online on YouTube. Watch those clips on YouTube, right? He has a YouTube channel called Brandon Sanderson. He also has his Stormlight series, which is Way of Kings. He has his Way of Kings Stormlight series. And I've heard a lot of good things about it. I might even purchase the book and read it for myself, because I've heard a lot of good things about Way of Kings. But I'm not an avid reader. I'm not a book reader. I don't mind reading books here and there, but I'm not an avid reader. The only reason why I bought Lord of the Rings is because everyone kept hyping J.R.R. Tolkien, saying how he's such an amazing author. And I saw the movies many times. I wanted to give the book a try. Hence why I bought the series and I read the books. Obviously, I recommend Victoria Justice. You purchase Lord of the Rings and read the series for yourself if you haven't read it. It's a good series, I'm saying. She's probably not. I guarantee you VJ is not into fantasy. I guarantee you VJ is more into romance and like self-help. She's more into like non-fiction self-help books and that kind of stuff. Whereas me, I'm not into that stuff. Me, I'm more into what? I'm more into fantasy. I don't mind romance too. I bought a romance book a couple years ago. I bought a book called The Proposal. That was a pretty good book. But yeah. So yeah, and I told you, the Hollywood, I believe, should have made 6 movies, 6 Lord of the Rings movies. They should have made it book by book instead of doing the whole Lord of the Rings book, the whole Lord of the Rings movie. Because Lord of the Rings 3 movies is not enough for the trilogy, because there's so much information going on in the book. Hence why I believe they should have done 6 movies. They should have done it book by book. That way we would have gotten all the characters and a good chunk of the dialogue in the movie. You can't obviously have everything in there, but they should have at least done one. They should have done it book by book. Book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, book 6. So each book has two. Each of the books has 2 books in it. So Fellowship of the Ring has 2 books within the one story. Two Towers has 2 books within the one story, and Return of the King has 2 books within the story. I believe that Hollywood should have done it that way. They would have made more money for themselves, and you would have got a more faithful adaptation to J.R.R. Tolkien's book. And you would have imagine seeing Tom Bombadil, Glorfindel, you know what I'm saying, all these characters, Uglu, Grishnak. Imagine seeing all these characters that were cut out in the movie. Obviously, it would have been you look at something top notch. It would have been top notch. Would have been top notch movie. It would have been a bit slower, obviously, because it takes time for the story to kick in. But you would have got the full universe, the full world of J.R.R. Tolkien. Even though the movies you got what even though Peter Jackson, he brought the world to life, he did an amazing job. You know what I'm saying? You got what, a good chunk of J.R.R. Tolkien's story. At the end of the day, he wasn't as faithful to the story, as he only followed like 20% of the book. And you'll see what I mean when I start reading chapter one. You'll notice how a lot of dialogue and scenes are cut out from the movie. I'll start reading chapter one today, and I'm gonna show you guys. You guys are gonna once I read chapter one, you guys are like, holy shit, this is nothing like the movie. Yeah, there's the only thing, like only like a few bits and pieces of dialogues you see in the movie, and sometimes you even have some dialogues from some characters that are given to another character in the movie. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And sometimes people say lines in the movie that are in a different scene. So they'll say that line in the movie, but wait a minute, when this is not when this character said this line. You know what I'm saying? There's some differences, yeah, man. But Peter Jackson, even though he followed 20% of the book, Lord of the Rings is a difficult book to adapt. Obviously, at the end of the day, he had to adapt the movie with what he had. The studios only had him do 3 movies, hence he obviously had to cut. You can't fit all of Lord of the Rings in 3 movies, no way. He had to cut a lot of scenes because he had no choice, obviously. And I believe Peter Jackson did an amazing job. As Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, is the best movie trilogy ever made. So the book is the best fantasy novel ever written. But once Sands gets released, it'll top Lord of the Rings, obviously. And the movie is the best movie trilogy ever made. I don't think any movie trilogy can top that, except for Zane's if it's done right. If Zane's is done right, it will be a better movie than Lord of the Rings. And you guys think I'm crazy now, but once you read my book, you'll finally see what I mean. You're looking at an amazing story, man. A story even better than this book here. J.R.R. Tolkien's a legend. I respect him, but his book is not as good as my book. As I told you, I read the prologue. You guys get an idea as the book can be boring. As a prologue of Fellowship of the Ring is pretty boring, and the first half of the book is pretty boring, as it just drags on. It drags on for a long time. It's not until you get to the part with a Ford, with the 9, that's pretty interesting, and then with the Rivendell scene is pretty boring. It's not until they leave Rivendell, when the ring goes south, that's when the story gets interesting. When they're through the mines of Moria, that's when the story gets more interesting. It starts to pick up more. Whereas the first half of Fellowship of the Ring is pretty boring. Hence why Peter Jackson had to cut a lot of scenes to keep the story pacing, because J.R.R. Tolkien drags on for a long time with all these descriptions, with just them walking and talking and meeting all these people. It's just about the first half of the book is just about Frodo and Sam and Pippin, and they meet Merry along the way. They meet Tom Bombadil. They meet all these characters. They meet Mr. Maggot. You know what I'm saying? And then they go to Bree, to the Prancing Pony. They meet Aragorn. They meet the manager. It's very slow. And then Frodo gets stabbed by the poisonous blade. You know what I'm saying? He meets Glorfindel. You know what I'm saying? They ride through the ford, obviously to Rivendell, and Frodo confronts the ring wraiths. That's when it starts to pick up a little bit. And then the Rivendell scene is pretty boring because the Council of Elrond drags on for pages, man. In the movie, they had the Council of Elrond only like a good like 10 minutes. But if they were to follow the book, it'd be like a good like 40 minutes to Council of Elrond. It's fucking crazy, man. Hence why they had to call all these scenes. I don't blame them, obviously. But I still believe they should have followed 70% of the book. They should have had it in 6 movies. Book. So 1 movie per book. 1 movie per book, right? 1 movie per book, and they should have followed like 60 to 70% of each book. You don't have to follow everything, obviously. They should have followed a good 65 to 70% of each book, in my opinion. That way, what? That way, we would have got the full story of Lord of the Rings. Because the movies only gave us a good 20% chunk of J.R.R. Tolkien's book. But even then, the movies are still amazing, and they're masterpieces, obviously. They're masterpieces. Let me stop babbling on. I babbled on for 30 minutes. I'm going to start reading. you guys prefer that I babble on, right? Than read, because me reading this is, yeah. I hope it's not boring when I read this. What I'll do is I'll comment to make it more interesting. But I told you I'm not well grounded in the Lord of the Rings. I'm afraid to make a mistake if I comment. So to all you fantasy book nerds out there who are Lord of the Rings fans, if I make any errors, bear with me as I'm not fully grasped in the Lord of the Rings world. Because I saw the movies, I understand. I get the story. But like, there's so much going on in the book, and I'm not born with a big USB to understand everything yet. I have to read this book 2, 3 times to really understand it and do some research. So if I end up making an error, you have to bear with me. But I know if I just read it, it's going to be a bit more boring. So I thought it'd be cool for me to read and comment while I read. I'll comment a bit more to make it more interesting. That way you guys are not bored. But my videos are interesting because anything with Ivan Omer is interesting, obviously, right? Yeah. So I'll start chapter 1, right? So I'll read a good 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 chapters of Lord of the Rings, and around there I'll stop. And to all you guys out there who haven't read the book, I recommend you go on Amazon, you buy the book. You can get this edition here that I have. It's only $40. You'll see it on Amazon, and you just type in Lord of the Rings series. You see it on Amazon, or you can get the more top-notch editions, which are more expensive. They're like 70 plus bucks, 70, 80, 90, even $100 for what? For the for the book. And when I read the book, I'll read it with more life. That way it's more interesting. Because I know if I slack off and I'm lazy, it'll be boring. It'll be a bit more boring. So I'm gonna read with life. I'll read a good 15 pages. I'm gonna read this book with life. That way it's more interesting. Obviously. And to all you Lord of the Rings fans, buckle up. I just looking at an interesting video for this, obviously. Because I guarantee you guys are probably happy. Oh my god, it's exciting seeing Ivan reading my favorite fantasy book. As Lord of the Rings is considered like the best fantasy book in the fantasy genre. So no book can pretty much beat it. Way of Kings can't even beat it. There's some people who like the Stormlight series, Bran Sanderson, Stormlight Way of Kings book better. There's some people who like Game of Thrones better. There's some people who like Name of the Wind better by Patrick Rothfuss. Yeah, you're welcome for throwing your book out there. There's some people who like Harry Potter better. But that's rare. Most fantasy nerds like Lord of the Rings the best because Lord of the Rings has unheard of war building. That's an amazing story. I'm gonna show my camera here.